Hi everyone. Today I am out here, as usual, hand watering. It's just something I like to do. I feel like it gives me the opportunity to, see what's happening in my garden, trust in what is getting enough water, especially with the tomatoes, so I can see if my water's percolating properly. I just personally don't do irrigation, and if anyone wants to know why, I don't know, I'm scared to leave the hose on all night long. If something fails and we have a flood or there's water damage, I'm a victim of a flood at 2 or 3 points in my life. So I have a healthy respect for water. So plus, as I said, I really enjoy coming out and just having the opportunity to get to know what's happening in my garden. So it's times like this where I like to view what is getting sick, try to get ahead of disease before you have, a lot of heartache. So I do want to walk around and show you some things that I'm discovering today, so you can have an idea of what it is and how you might handle it. Maybe you even may have some advice for me that we are always willing to hear. So let's take a walk around and show you a few things, sadly, that I'm seeing today, but I think it's important that everyone should know about this. I'm trying to get into the house because I'm very hungry. I've been out here working all morning. And it's really hard to come up and see the beauty of this bachelor's button, which is truly blue, by the way. Such an amazing little flower. I have two varieties here. One is giving me blue and pink and purple flowers, and one is just blue. I'll have to get those packets for you. And then we have the jet black hollyhock, which is just so incredibly beautiful. But we all know what comes with hollyhock, and that's rust. Now I'm going to show you in depth some rust. This is one of the diseases that I'm going to show you today. And we already removed several of our hollyhocks, and I won't grow them again because the rust, I believe, has started problems elsewhere. So that has to come out soon. Now, we're already getting into the season where things like larkspur that wants to lay down, wants to get staked, things start to get lazy, or they get heavy and overwhelmed with their flowers. So it creates a lot of opportunity for other diseases to happen. Things don't get enough circulation, and maybe they get a little sick. Gosh, but look at the color. This is my first year with this larkspur. Oh my goodness. You know what? It reminds me of delphinium. It has like a little bit of a blue to it. So, this is something that, I'll take. If you have plants that are laying down, but their flower wants to stand up. I should have planted these in the back border of the main garden so that they could move forward and have plenty of room to do their thing. But what I'm about to show you is really very sad. It's not about the larkspur. It's my beloved snapdragons. So sad. And more hollyhocks. Let's go to hollyhocks. The wind has started to take this black hollyhock down, but look at this rust. This is terrible. This plant, in my opinion, is beyond saving. It's laying on its side. The rust is so bad. We already took, like I said, several out. So we'll be saying goodbye to hollyhock because of rust. So if you're growing hollyhock, everyone, and you're seeing something like this, rust, can attack your strawberries. It can attack several things. For the most part, this variety of rust will stay on the hollyhock, but if you're growing strawberries near your hollyhocks, blackberries, anything that brambles, you may want to consider, if you would rather have your berries, you may not want to grow hollyhock. So that's one that's coming out. Now here's a few snapdragons, my beloved snapdragons. For all of you who have been here, you know how much I love coming out and seeing these flowers and watching the big bumblebees bury themselves inside of the flower. I realized this year that snapdragons can get a form of rust. So this was devastating to me. I cried. I didn't even want to come out here to the garden to sit with my snapdragons like I usually do and watch the bees, because my heart was so broken. I sort of abandoned them in their sickness, but I've already started having to cull them because of the rust. So this is an example, which I thought early on as they were re-emerging, because these are perennial tall deluxe snapdragons. They really are perennial. They came back on their own. They happily sowed to a point where it was just too much of a party. I thought that these were early aphids, but it turns out that it's rust. and you know, we had to do some research. It can be treated with a fungicidal soap, but the disease has progressed so badly because we're so busy that we have to cull all of the snapdragons. Now, it starts off kind of benign, and you'll see that, oh, maybe it looks like you just have some white spots on top. Maybe you know, your snapdragons are getting a little bleached out or something. Maybe it's from the splatter of hose water. If you have municipal water, you'll realize that municipal water with all of its chlorine in it can bleach out some of your flowers. And I thought, well, could it be powdery mildew? And that was when I saw the rust infestation. And this is what happens when it totally takes over. Now, for those of you who know how much I loved my snapdragons, people who have watched our videos and come back and said, oh my gosh, look at your beautiful snapdragons, you'll know right now how bad my heart is breaking. So the rust just sucks the life out of it basically, and then it withers up into this. So we're getting ready to pull all of this out. Very, very sad, very, very heartbreaking. I do have a few healthy snapdragons that are re-emerging because they do, you know, when they get to this point and they start throwing their seeds, they are very vigorous self-sower volunteers in the garden. But now I fear that I'm going to be dealing with this level of rust. And it's just very, very sad and concerning. Now over here I have some phlox, and I planted this from bare root last year from Long Field Gardens from Costco. And it really did take a while for the flower to come up. Look how beautiful the flower is. But now I realized they came out today, and I thought, oh my goodness, I have powdery mildew all over my phlox. So this is something that I'm going to have to treat before it jumps over and gets a hold of my zinnias, which it can. And once powdery mildew gets it, I mean, you can treat and treat and treat, but powdery mildew is bad. So I may need to cull these. We're going to have to talk about it and see what we're willing to do to treat, but I think that these phlox may also be I think they may be goners. Now here is a dahlia that I've grown from seed. Dahlia, I'm realizing can get many diseases. Galls are one of them. And today I realized when it was thirsty it needed a little bit of a drink. I looked down and I kept saying, what's happening with this plant? My beautiful dahlia has powdery mildew. So, you know, this is something I always say, if I'm going to have to work this hard to maintain this plant, I'm not going to grow it again. Now, I don't know, you know, dahlias are perennials. You can have them for a very long time. They do require work at the end of the year and storing them and replanting them. But I'm going to have to try to figure out, you know, what's happening here and why I have so much powdery mildew, because it's only really a matter of time before it gets to my cucumbers, and I really don't want that to happen. So now I'm back in my tomato garden, and every day when I water I like to inspect and make sure that I don't have any early blight starting or black spot, which I'll show you. I do have a little bit of black spot, but here's a problem that can happen, that can occur, is blossom end rot. Now you see this is on a Jersey Devil, which I was very surprised to see because it's isolated to just one tomato. Now this could have happened because it just couldn't uptake the calcium, or because you know, maybe it got exposed somehow to something. You never know. Sometimes you can have black spot on a few tomatoes on the same plant, but the rest of them are okay. So what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to insert some Tums down at the base and make sure I crumble it up and get it worked into the soil and be sure that this is taking up some calcium. A lot of things can cause that, but it's an indicator for you to know the health of your tomatoes. Now over here I'm going to skip over to the next tomato bed. Here goes some Hungarian hearts. You can see how beautiful that blossom end is. And so for those of you who don't know what blossom end rot is, or blossom bottom rot, for some reason where the little flower was, this is, you know, this is where your original yellow flower starts. Okay, there's flowers, so the tomato forms above that, and then you get this on the end. If that takes on a little black tip, your tomato is never going to recover. It's best to take that tomato off of your vine so it doesn't suck up all the nutrients. But here's a little bit of a problem here. Black spot. happens with a lot of these heirloom tomatoes. They're, you know, who knows, it could be because it was on another area and maybe a bee brought it over, maybe an ant, maybe some other pest, but this is something that can run rampant through your garden. So it's a good idea to come out while you're taking care of everything and just make sure you get a good inspection on all of your gardens so that you know what your problem is. Sometimes you might confuse, you know, maybe birds are sitting up here. You can see we have a little bit of bird poo. So maybe the birds are bringing the black spot. I just don't know. So I like to get under here, look at all my tomatoes, see if their blossoms are suffering from anything, and they're not. Sometimes you'll get an end that is cat-faced or from a fasciated blossom, and it might look a little weird, but it's not. It's just the way they grow. So you want to make sure you know the difference between cat-facing and blossom end rot. There are two things that you want to consider. So here's a little bit more black spot. Classic beef and Abe Lincoln and Hungarian heart. They tend to not like things to touch them. So I'm going to have to heavily prune them. They don't seem to like the cosmos behind them, maybe, or maybe, like I said, maybe it's because a bird brought it in or an ant, and now it's just starting to spread. So I'll just give that some more circulation, good ventilation through all the leaves, and make sure that it doesn't really become a problem. Now behind me you'll see one of my pepper beds. Big bell peppers tend to get scorch, and a lot of people confuse scorch with some sort of a disease. The best thing you can do if you see, you know, scorch is a burn. It's a sunburn on the flesh of the tomato. That's an indicator that you're going to need some shade cloth. Now, I have pulled all of the peppers that I had. Sometimes I say tomato when I really meant pepper, and I'll say pepper when I really meant tomato. So bear with me on that. Sometimes when you see this little burnt spot, sometimes it looks a little speckly black, and then it'll turn to like a beige color and it gets soft. You know, that you want to pull that pepper. It's never going to recover when it gets scorched. So pull it off, but that doesn't mean that the whole pepper is bad. You can cut off the area and cook the rest of it. It's usually not necessary to throw away an entire fruit because you have something, you know, like a little bit of scorch. Now, if you have an ant infestation or a worm infestation, you know, you may want to throw that whole thing away. Blossom end rot, like I said, you'll never recover from that. You can never cut that off and have an actual good tomato. But, you know, they're just a few examples of things to look out for. So far, I feel like I'm not doing too bad in the garden. So many things can come up, like mosaic virus, which tends to hit beans, and cucumbers get it. Cucumbers get the powdery mildew. Once your cucumbers get powdery mildew, it's over. So you want to keep making sure you succession sow cucumber seeds so that you can have a full year of your cucumbers. So they're just moody. I mean, sometimes they need blood or bone meal to beef up as a fertilizer to get their fruits going. But you just can't really cure powdery mildew on some of these leaves. So make sure when you're watering your garden, you guys, if you water with drip irrigation or you have some other source of irrigation, that you get into all of these plants and you have a good look and start surveying everything that you're growing. You want to look for things like army worms in your tomatoes. They'll wipe out your tomatoes. This is the time when a lot of little leaf-footed nymphs will come in and start to get into your garden, and they stink bugs, things like that, that will pierce through a tomato, and you waste the whole fruit that way. So you need to know with diseases and certain pests, you know, when to get ahead of that and how to inspect. I like doing it early in the morning or in the evening when the sun is setting, because then the light is just right. It gives you an opportunity to get ahead, start treating it or culling where necessary. So I guess I got my work cut out for me, you guys. I got to make sure I get back to checking everything out. So thanks for stopping in to watch this video. I hope it helped you. If it did, or you like to give it a thumbs up, hope to see you guys in the next video.